Hello and welcome to We Women Want. This is our weekly show where we discuss issues pertaining to women. Everything is on the table, from fashion to health to domestic violence to laws that help women to work-life balance. We discuss everything. But today we are going to be taking a look at what the next generation really thinks about. The women of today, what are they taking to mind? What are their challenges? How are they facing life? I have a panel with me of millennials. So they are women who are in their 30s. They have actually made their life choices. They've got married, they've had kids, or decided not to have kids, or wait a while. They've got their careers spanned out. So what do they think of the work-life challenge? What do they think of our generation, the generation, their parents' generation, which I guess I belong? So what do they think of the Gen X, and what do they think of the new generation? The Alpha generation is really the biggest puzzle over here. So that is something I'm going to be discussing in the show today. I have with me on the panel Richa Kapoor. She's an executive producer at Newsx, and she also hosts her own show on tech and cars and autos. But I think today we are going to be talking relationships. Also on the show with me is Vedika Mehra. She has a master's in culture policy and she runs her own restaurant, Bisque. I think we all should go there soon after this show. And Arshita Kapoor, familiar face, she's back with us again. She's a counselor, college counselor. She was at British School and she's now at Jayashree Periwal. So someone who's dealt a lot with the generation next also. So good to have you all on the show. But Richa, let's begin with you. In terms of relationships, you are now at a point where you have a fairly good idea of what you want from your life. You're married, you have a 3.5-year-old daughter. And also you have got a full-fledged work on your plate. So what were these choices like, or did they just happen organically, or is it something you worked towards? You always knew you're going to work, but you also wanted a family.
Yes, I think that was very certain, Priya, that I always knew that I wanted to get married. I always knew I wanted to work. And to have a child, I think I became more certain about it during COVID. I've been married for 11 years. So I did not marry late, but I did not marry very young as well. What I feel the choice I did not think about, and I think a lot of people don't, is yes, motherhood and your work, especially when you're peaking at your work, does come at the same time. Even though I am very much working in an industry which is very time consuming, I'm just fortunate that I've been here for long, therefore I can manage my time. But that does not happen really with everybody. When you have a kid, it does take a village to raise a child. And the head of the village is always the mother, no matter what anybody says.
Mother or mother-in-law?
Mother. In my case, I would be happy to say just mother. But it's always the mother. They do need you a lot more than one thinks. And at the same point in time, you want to give enough time to work because that's what you built yourself. So the choices I made, I'm very happy about it. I got married at a point in time wherein I was certain I wanted to marry. I never wanted to marry at 25. My elder sister was married very young. I got married at 29. And I had a child when I was 34. So I gave my relationship enough time, and I'm trying to give my child as much time. And I know one thing, what is really taking the brunt of it is my work. I will not lie about that. I could have achieved, I could have been at multiple other places. I'm not unhappy about it, but yes, it's a very tough balancing act. Therefore, when people say that they do not want to have children and they're more concentrated on their career or any other thing, sometimes they think they're financially not there, because children nowadays are very expensive. No matter what anybody says, it's expensive to raise children in a standard that you want. Be that school, be that facilities, be that external help, everything is expensive. So that's one call. Otherwise, some people do not, the relationship themselves nowadays are not so stable. We hear of divorces on a day-to-day basis nowadays. People have been married for a longer period of time who do not consider that, they're in it. If you're not in it, I don't think you should bring another person and then it becomes a baggage for the parent and the child. Therefore, these are not easy decisions to be made. I'm very sure back in the days, they were easier because options were lesser. We are in a world where we've discussed about this on We Women Want so many times. The left-right swiping, the Tinder availability, the option availability, career option. She would be able to tell us. We were like journalist, lawyer, doctor, engineer, you're very certain, banker, nothing more than that. And now look at the amount of choices. I think the choices makes decision-making ability harder.
Very well put, Richa, I must say. And before I come to Arshita, because she also deals with the Gen X, I would, sorry, with the Alpha Gen, Vedika, I would really like to talk to you about your life choices. Also, you are married, but as of now, you have, decided to wait a while before you have a kid. How did that decision go down well with the others, and what made you decide?
I had that. I got married late. I got married around 28, and I have an elder sister. She also got married at 25. So everybody in my family, typical Indian Punjabi household, get married. But obviously, I was going through the whole arranged marriage process, and then COVID happened. So I think that gave me a little more time. But yeah, I've been married now 2.5 years, but I do get to hear it from everybody around me that now it's the right time, and you're young, you should have a child. But I honestly feel that everybody is so busy right now. Like, I don't want to add another member right now where I can't commit. That it's a commitment, it's a very big commitment, and I don't think it's just from one person, it's from both partners. And when both partners are ready, I feel that is there. And yeah, obviously the pressure gets to you, but if you and your partner have had that conversation, I feel then you're on the same page, then you can deal with it however.
But you also working, right?
Yeah, I'm also working.
So, is there, a certain this thing that, first let the work take off and do well, and then I will focus on the child?
So for me, like it's an established business, but yeah, there are points where I feel like, I need to add more because it's been running for so many years. And somewhere I do feel like I need to give time to my work right now and then focus later, where I feel also a little more settled in my work, and then I can feel like, okay, now it's the time.
And do you live in a joint family, or is it
I live in a joint family.
So pressure from the in-laws?
Yeah, from all sides, not just in-laws.
Mother also.
Mother, everywhere, yeah.
So this is a generation that thankfully is still listening to the mothers and the in-laws, which I don't see the next generation, Arshita, that you unfortunately are dealing with in your professional life. But first, you have a son also, 4-year-old. The decision to, did you get married early? Did you wait a while before having a kid like Richa, or was it something that happened soon after? And what were the choices you were making?
So I've been married for now 8 years. So I was married when I was 26. So I think it was fairly okay to be married around 26, 27. I felt that I was quite settled in my career. I had what I wanted. I had been seeing my now husband for about 10 years before that. So we had a very long-standing relationship. So it was the natural next step to take. In terms of children, we waited about 4 years into the marriage to have Arthveer. And it does take a huge toll on my career. I think I was in and out for about 2 years because, the first 6 months you're literally just lost. And then it takes time to kind of get back into the system. And in college counseling, every year is more like a new year because you run the college counseling cycle and then you move on to the next child. So I was actually out for like 2 full cycles because, the first year you're having a baby, the second one you're kind of still struggling to get back. It did take a huge toll on where I was and then kind of getting back. So I think it's taken me nearly 2 extra years to get back where I was before I had Arthveer. So I think it's a decision that I tell all my friends that think about having a child because it is going to take a toll on your life, your relationship. Everything is going to be shaken. It's not easy, and don't do it to that child. He or she deserves to come into the world where, he's wanted and he's given that attention that he deserves. Sometimes parents will get a child into the world thinking it's the thing to do, it's the right age. But if you can't take out the time and you can't emotionally do all of that for him or her, then it's really not for you. Because like Richa also said, they're expensive. You have to make lots of money to raise children in today's day and age. And of course, the career is taking a toll as well.
So in your career, was there any point, like Richa also talked about, that your career does take a hit? Did you, you also said that it's a 2-year cycle that you miss out on. You were working in the organization. Was a question ever raised that are you going to get pregnant and are you going to take leave? Is that something that's held against you?
In fact, no. My previous organization was very, very comfortable with the fact that, in fact, I joined them when I was already pregnant. So it was a huge one that they were okay with, and they were like, no, no, it's fine. It's something that you have to do as a mother. So I think within the 6 months of me being in the organization, I was on maternity leave, and I still remember one thing that my brother said was that most women don't go back after the 6 months. Make sure you're back day one, because if you don't do that, you're probably never going back. So that stuck with me, and I think as soon as I did the 6 months, I was like, I have to go back so that I'm on track and in like the circle of doing everything like I needed to. So I think that's very important.
I completely agree with her on this one, because this is very important, especially somebody who wants to continue to have a career. There are a lot of people that you will meet, especially now we are in that motherhood kind of place where we might meet more mothers at school, at play dates, where people decided, okay, I will take a break from my career. It will no longer be a thing. But if you're someone who does not want to take a break from your career, once your maternity leave is over, you should go back. It is very hard on you. It's extremely hard. It's the hardest on the mother than anybody else, no matter what anybody says. It's the hardest on them, because you want to leave your child, you don't want to leave your child. When you leave your child and you go back and you're like, I was doing all of this, and now the people who could not do this, and now they're doing it better than me, just because their time management is easier for them. And there does come a point, no matter what one says, when you go back to office, even if it's the most understanding space that you worked for years in, which I have. I have worked in a single organization for 14 years. You do go back and you're like, I am still stuck there where the others could push ahead just because I took that break. So that understanding where she's coming from, I think it's a very good idea. Take your time. Be very sure you want to do this for yourself. Parents, in-laws, friend circle, Instagram, everything will make you feel, oh, everybody's having a baby, I should also have a baby. That's not it. Just like marriage. Just because everybody is getting married and celebrities are getting married and it looks beautiful to get married, does not mean you should get married. If it's a decision, the partnership, most important is that partnership should be ready for it. They should be sure that, yes, we want a child or we want to get married. If they feel they want to live together without commitment, that is perfectly fine. It's legit and it's okay.
No, hang on, it's perfectly fine today. But I think in especially my generation and perhaps even yours, Pallavi, I think there was eyebrows were raised. Marriage was...
Yeah.
And even today we have state governments, Himanta Biswa, the Uttarakhand state government, that is frowning and banning live-in relationships. So we are heading back. But in terms of live-in relationships, how, Pallavi, would you see the next generation that, have you been talking to them, I'm sure, their values. They don't really want to be tied down in a relationship. They don't want to be tied down in a home also. Most of them don't want to buy a home. For us, the first priority was, like Richa said, save, make sure you're financially independent so you can then bring in a child. Here, these kids don't want a home, don't want kids, don't want marriage.
Yeah. So, like I see my nephew who's 6 years old now. He's completely like a very independent boy at that age. And I think at 6, we were very different. And I think like I have cousins who are much younger to me and they are all very, very strong-minded. I don't think they can get swayed by their parents, or they will get into that pressure of like, okay, now it's the right time to get married. If they want to get married, I think they will say, okay. And if not, maybe they'll say, I just want to live in with somebody, and the parents will have to be okay with it. It's not that they're going to say, oh, what is this one going to say or that one going to say? But because I don't think that the generation below us really does bother that much about what people are going to say or what society is going to say.
Correct.
And they're very independent. They're doing much more than what we did at that age. And they're very work-oriented. They're very focused compared to, I think, what...
I mean, I would say one thing in difference. I can't be very sure about them being focused because we work with a lot of them and I consider that we were differently focused. They're differently focused. For them, when we talk about... There is a lot of jokes, especially if you see on social media when millennials make those kind of jokes that we were all about... We could even party, but we had to go to work. We could not call up our boss and tell them, I'm sorry, I'm not turning up. We get that so many times. So they have...
No. So the excuses that we get is, oh, I'm not in the right space. Or I need me time. Me time is So suddenly we are also in a very sensitive generation where, even about kids, you probably will know, you cannot... we were just discussing something before we went on air and my mother would just slap me. Can you now slap your child?
Not at all.
You may want to in the four walls of your home, but the school teachers are going to...
The school can't say anything to kids nowadays.
Yeah.
You are astonished by the feedback when you get from school, because you're like, I was caned. I went to an all-girls school, I was caned, and I didn't raise an eyebrow, my mother didn't raise an eyebrow. We couldn't say anything, and there were proper punishments, and I don't know right or wrong, but we turned out well.
Yeah. I always say, that we all got one slap, at least one slap when we were growing up. And I think we were fine. We still turned out okay. And we understand boundaries. We understand what are things that you have to do, even if it's a formality. But I think in this generation, something that is a formality means a no. And hierarchy means nothing. Mental health breaks are given more importance than the actual work being done. And that is something that is taking a toll on the industry, because everyone is complaining. It's not just like one industry complaining. Everyone is complaining about how nobody is serious enough about what needs to be done. So in my parents' generation, I feel like everyone was very driven by stability, like stick to a job and that is your achievement. I've worked in a place for 25 years and that is the biggest achievement. For us, it's more about achieving the highest place in what kind of work you're doing. But for these kids, it's more about movement, comfort, mental health. Where do I feel good about myself? It's not about, the vibe.
The choices. They've been given a lot more choices, and I feel like, our parents' generation, their parents were very strict, and they had that fear, which came on to us from our parents. But today, I don't see that fear in children. It's not fear that, oh, you should be scared, but it's fear out of respect that I don't want to do something that will make my parents feel disrespected, or that does not matter today.
I just want to add one more thing here. When you talk about fear, it's maybe not just fear, it's just accepting the fact, which we all accepted, that our parents would know slightly better than us. Yeah. Because they live longer, they are our parents, they would want our good, and they
We
don't
respect age and experience.
Yeah.
Here you respect Google and Grok.
ChatGPT.
Okay, we need to take a quick break. We're going to come back and then I'm going to ask Arshita, because she deals a lot with the Gen Alpha. So the trials and tribulations of your job, but after a quick break. Hello and welcome back to We Women Want. We're here discussing what the Millennials think of the Gen Alpha and what do they think of the Gen X, because I have a panel of Millennials with me. But Arshita, you are dealing with the Gen Alpha also. We were discussing their priorities, and I think what you and Richa and everyone just said, that they just live in the now. For them, there is no future planning. There is no respect for the past. We let the past also give perspective. We respected age and experience. These guys, are they all in it for themselves? Don't they think about the future?
I think a huge difference is that we grew up when technology was kind of coming up and we were growing with technology. They have been brought into the world where they are in the center of technology, and that has made such a big difference. So for them, relying on Google and ChatGPT and any kind of AI becomes more important than even relying on your parents. When we were growing up, what mom said or your teacher said was very important. It was literally that if they've said it, it means business. You would even rely on books. But here, everything is what ChatGPT says. And we all know that it's not reliable, right? So a lot of their information is coming from sources that are not good enough. And their trust on these sources are very high. So I think that's a dilemma that they're still kind of understanding, going through. But they are growing up with, they're in the center of tech. And I think that has made such a big difference in terms of how they are being raised and how they are growing up today. Very big mindset.
But don't they have any, also is it perhaps, I think, because, early on there was a joint family. Then our generation, the Gen X, began to branch off on our own with nuclear families. So we are parents, nuclear parents who have brought up the child. The family unit keeps diminishing. The child may not even want to look after the parent. The alpha child.
So I think that's very interesting that you bring that up, because that's a discussion I had with my grandmom recently when she told me that, your son is 4 years old, why don't you plan another child? Which is something that most, grandparents will say. So I told her that, do you think that my child is going to stay back in the country, or even if he's here, he's going to be living with me? If he has to live on his own, not be connected with anyone anyway, then he's okay the way he is. Why should I reduce my resources, not live the way I want to live, to raise 2 kids who will live individual lives and not be concerned with who I am? So ultimately, it's that. I don't think we have an expectation of, that the child is going to look after me. I think which is why we see a increase in the number of old age homes and senior living facilities. Those are things that are coming up because it is more fun to be with people who are your age and are going through something similar, being looked after and still being happy in the place that you're at. I think expectations are becoming lower and kids are becoming more independent, and they also want to be in touch with their parents but not living with their parents.
But you will look after your parents.
I will, for sure.
Everybody on the panel. I want a commitment from everybody.
Of course, goes without saying. I think it's just a matter of like everybody wants their space and nobody wants to be like, don't interfere in my life. That is the attitude. And I don't think it's just the generation below us. It's the generation above us. It's a generation. I think it also comes from your values, that if you've seen your, I've lived in a joint family. I'm married into a joint family. I'm very attached to all my grandparents, and I've seen my friends who are not attached to their grandparents for whatever reasons, whether it's their nani, nani, whoever, they don't have that attachment. But I think it really comes down to how your parents also are with their family. You see it in the generation above. If your parents are not close to their siblings, later on, how will it can be go either way. You'll either be close to your sibling or you won't be, because at the end of the day, they are also living independent lives.
Yeah, so but early on there was a system that made you at least interact with them because there was a joint family. But Richa, you are still with your in-laws.
Yes, I live with my in-laws and my parents also live very close by, and I am that child who takes care of 4 older people and 1 younger child. And yes, it has its own pressures, but it has its own joys. And as she mentioned, I think it's a lot of learning. It's a lot of example learning. I have seen my parents take care.
That's a good point.
I have seen my in-laws take care when they were not doing health-wise okay, also taking care of older people, is when you realize it means something. Everything cannot be a materialistic relationship. And that is where I think the whole tech, all of it is coming down to. We are becoming so materialistic. If there is not a transactional thing there, we don't want that relationship. That needs to end. It has to be a selfless connection. I do this for you because I care. I do this for you not because you're going to give me property when you go.
What can I get out of it?
Yeah.
That concept is just getting blurred.
Also, I feel like, we have more friends. We want to be with our friends. We don't want to be with the family. But like when we were growing up, that concept for my grandparents and parents was like, okay, friends, but cousins, their extended relatives and all was a lot. Family first was very important. Like, I've seen my grandparents so close to their cousins, like they would all just be hanging with each other. They didn't have friends, I'm going to this one's house, because everybody was in one place. So that unity was there.
They need to look out. But now
the family was the community and the family was the friends.
Now we have friends who are like family.
Yeah, exactly.
But this community bit, because we, Richa and I were in fact having a conversation in an earlier show where we had this young girl, again Gen Alpha, and she said, we were very curious as to why are you not wanting to get married, because what will happen to your old age? Everybody's just worried about that. So she says, I don't want to get bogged down. She was the swipe left and swipe right lifestyle, and she said, I'm very happy with it. And eventually, if I want to settle down, there will be a community of like-minded people and we will look after each other. How does that appeal to you?
I feel like it is something that we have to be open to, right? We don't know if a few years down the line, our kids are going to be there for us, or if they're going to be here, they're going to be somewhere else. We don't know where life is going to take them. And I think senior living and living with your friends is something that we have to set our minds to, because it is something that is looking like more of a possibility than being with your family. So I'm quite open to that.
In fact, the old age homes, as Ashita also mentioned, are now, they were in a very bad shape. But
now look at them. Look at Antara. Look, people are wanting to buy property there. Say, even if we have a house, we'll go spend a weekend there. We'll have people of our own age. What you guys don't have the same kind of conversations we do. And at the same thing, what she said, mentioned about, her grandparents having their cousins around and that being the unit. We are getting, as she mentioned, she has 1 child, I have 1 child, she has no kids. The number of family members are also reducing. Therefore, you need to have more friends and you need to have your own community, what we call. I've been lucky, and I'm sure you guys must have also been lucky. We found great friends during our school days and they continue to be our friends. But for Gen Alpha, what I am viewing, I don't see that happening. Again, because of technology, they have friends inwards. They have friends on Instagram, but they don't really have friends to go out to.
Absolutely, because of the digital world, they don't. I think they also emotionally shrunk, I would say, or whatever the word is, because they don't interact more. They don't get to have real relationships and real experiences. But moving on to the fact that just a bit more, we were talking about how mothers still influence us. So, Vedika, please tell me.
My mother.
She's
Oh,
already
God.
laughing.
Yeah, just before the show, I got a lecture that please talk slowly and softly. So my mother's influence is, I'm 30 years old, I'm married 3 years. The influence doesn't end, but it's still stuck. What will my mother say? But yeah, it's out of respect, and somewhere I know she's right.
So when you take a momentous decision, for all of you, somewhere at the back of your mind, is it that who is your reference point? Will this make my mother happy? Will this make my husband happy? Will this make my child happy? To abhi tak nahi. But who is your reference point? Or will it make my
First
friends?
also mother and father, but mother more.
Parents, huh?
Now obviously my husband also, he's added to the list, but yeah, so it's all three together. Like obviously your parents and your family is most important for me.
Family is still your reference point for any decision.
Yeah.
100%. I think, like we were speaking before the show also, the eyes that our mothers have shown us across our childhood are still stuck with us.
Still stuck.
We still show eyes to our kids and hope that those will stick when they need to, so that they can make the right choices and decisions. But I think whenever I'm doing something, making a decision, I'm stuck somewhere, the first call is to my parents and to my husband. And I want to know what they think about something that I'm going to do. Their influence is huge in my life, the decisions I've taken. I think it has always been driven by a lot of approval from the family.
I think that is completely correct, because even till date today, you would want, even if you don't agree with what your parents would say, sometimes you think differently, but you would still ask them. The first person you would dial would be your parents to ask, are you okay? If I'm talking something as small as taking a holiday. Sometimes they're like, oh, you think it's a good decision? Should I go here or there? It's not because you want the approval. You just, being in loop is so natural to us with them.
Subconsciously,
Like a
you are seeking their
Yes,
approval.
yeah, I guess. But
subconsciously.
talking about that, when I had my child, and my mother hadn't reached the hospital that time, the only thing I kept repeating, call my mom, call my mom, call my mom. Then your husband's here, I said, call my mom. She needs to be here right now. So yes, mothers for us, extremely
It's
important.
like a security
Your blanket.
yeah.
How your mothers will love this show. I can see one ode to the mother. I know we are totally out of time, but one quick question, especially for Arshita and Richa, is how do you discipline your child? Your mother showed you her eyes. Kabhi kabhi thappad bhi pad jata tha. Ab, what do? You
I think
take away their phone?
No, so I think something that I've learned is that a lot of explanation works. Kids understand a lot of logic. So there's a lot of speaking, there's a lot of two-way communication, but in the end, there are a few eyes also. Eyes are still
I would second that completely. I have done that just yesterday. The communication has increased a lot. She's absolutely correct. Nowadays, children, you would think, what will a 3 or a 4-year-old understand? They do. You talk to them, if they're throwing a tantrum, which is very common, and if you try to explain to them, 60% of it works. I think that's good. But yes, the eyes do work. I do show eyes. I am not away from that. I do it.
So Vedika, get your eyes.
Going to get to work soon.
Aankhein tiyar kar lo. But I think end of the day, this is also the age of the argumentative child. You don't have kids, you have in-house lawyers. They're ready to counsel,
But they
argue back.
they have a why to everything. But why? So they want to know why. Why can't I do this? Why can't I go here?
Why, which is usually followed by a no. So, all the best. On that note, thank you so much for coming here and a little bit sharing with us what is going on with our lives and how you see the future. But more next show. But for now, thank you so much for watching this.
For more such videos, subscribe to the Newsx YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.